Metal Jesus Rocks back again. Now, a couple weekends ago, it was PAX Prime 2011, and I had an opportunity to hang out with some of the coolest YouTubers on the planet. Pete Dora, Billy and Jay from the Game Chasers, Ryan right now, and I also had to meet up with a bunch of cool people like the Happy Console Gamer, Gamester81, the list just goes on and on. There were so many great YouTubers at PAX. But as you know, PAX is all about the games, and so I had actually saved up quite a bit of money to, just have available in case some games fell into my lap. I know. And luck would have it, quite a few did, thanks to some of those YouTubers. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun today to do something a little bit different. We've had fantastic weather in Seattle since PAX. And as a matter of fact, today it's supposed to be almost 90 degrees and it's September. It's crazy, right? So I thought it might be kind of fun to bring the gamer outside of the man cave and go to the park and shoot my pickups video. So I think it's gonna be really cool, and there's some awesome stuff. So let's take a look. So the week of PAX was really busy, but thankfully I work for my wife, and she's the coolest boss ever. And she knew I was gonna be busy driving around YouTubers and helping people out. So she kind of gave me the week off, and I put it to good use. I actually went out and did a little bit of game hunting on my own, and I'll show you what I found that week. To start off with, for the Sega Saturn, I've been in a huge shooter kick, and I found a copy of Darius Gaiden, which is a shooter on that system. Man, it has great graphics, the sound effects are excellent, the music is CD quality and it's just beautiful. This is a really fun shooter. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the box for it, but I hope to find the box and manual soon. But just to have the disc in my collection is a total win, so I was excited to add that. I also found for the original PlayStation 1, the classic Doom first-person shooter. Now, I haven't played a lot of this, but from what I have played to capture the video footage, it looks like it plays pretty close to the PC version. So I'm happy to own this and get this in my collection. A little bit hard to find on the PlayStation 1. I was kind of surprised. On the original NES, another shooter that I got from Another Castle Games in Edmonds is Gradius. This is a classic game as well. Again, I've been in a total shooter mood, so it's cool to add a bunch of classics to my collection like Gradius. So finally there. Speaking of shooters though, I have a bunch of them for the Super Nintendo. And let's start with one I read about in a British gaming magazine called Axelay. Now the feeling I get about Axelay is that people are kind of divided about it. I think a lot of people love its technology. It uses that Mode 7 technology to kind of stand out in the crowd and look and play a little bit differently, but I've heard it's brutally difficult, and so a lot of people don't like it for that reason. But it's definitely got a following, and it's cool to own on the Super NES. Let's see here. Found another shooter called Thunder Spirits. This looks like a little kind of an interesting game, a little bit like maybe Gradius, I guess. I don't know. I haven't played a lot of it, but again, I'm hoping to get all the great shooting games from the classic era. So that was one I had to get. Another one is, I believe it's pronounced Blazion, and it's cool to own this. Again, you can never have too many shooters. It's by Atlas. Finally got a game here, Gun Force. Didn't know much about it when I first picked it up. I don't have a lot of games for my Super Nintendo, and so I have a list of games that I just want to add over time, and this was one that a lot of people recommended, and so when I saw it, I had to pick it up. Very cool to own. And then finally, Jason Heine of the EMU Review did a great review on this game, Uniracers, for the Super Nintendo as well. And he just gave it glowing reviews, and then I read a bunch of the comments and people loved it as well. It looks like a really unique racing game with a pretty complex trick system. So I saw a copy of this and had to snag it. But I don't just get old games. Crazy as it is, I actually get some new games, and for the Xbox 360, man, I was super excited to pick up Deus Ex Human Revolution. Now, the original Deus Ex game, specifically Deus Ex 1, it's definitely in my top 10 of all-time games. I mean, it was just a fantastic first-person shooter that really melded together role-playing elements. It had multiple endings. It's just a fantastic game. And so when this game was announced, man, I was more than excited. I had to, I followed the previews closely to make sure they didn't screw it up. And I gotta say, they didn't screw it up. This is a fantastic game. The only complaint I have, and it's a common one, is that I like to play these games as stealth. And all of the boss battles so far require you to pretty much play them as a traditional shooter almost, and so it's a little unbalanced in the boss battles, and so I find them frustrating. But thankfully, you can adjust the difficulty settings on the fly, and it doesn't penalize you for that. So you can get past those parts and still enjoy the stealth aspects of it. But all the role-playing elements are there. It still has that fantastic cyberpunk vibe. So happy to own it. It's very cool. Now, unfortunately, on Saturday during PAX, I didn't have a ticket. I was such an idiot to only buy one-day pass to PAX. And so, but I put it to good use. I actually found on Craigslist an estate sale where they were blowing out their entire video game collection. And I went and got some amazing finds, including the original NES top loader, plus the original NES dog bone controller. Now, together, these go for 60, 70, 80, maybe more. I mean, they're sought after, they're hard to find. I got it for $5. That's a hell of a deal, and I was super excited, especially since my original NES has died. And so, awesome to get this. This was a great find, but they had games, and all of the games were only $2. And there were some actually kind of rare games there, including for the Atari 2600, Pigs in Space. This is a Muppets game sitting in their collection, $2. It's worth about $30. A ColecoVision game, which was there, was $2, and this is worth about $36. Again, I don't think they knew what they had in their estate sale, so it was actually pretty cool to get this and add it to my collection. It's Frogger 2 3 Deep, a classic game, and now I own it on the ColecoVision. But that's not all. They also had, for the Genesis, Road Rash 3, and I've heard this is a great version. I have now all the Road Rash games, and haven't played the third one yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Streets of Rage 2. A lot of people say this is one of the better Streets of Rage games. Again, $2. And an unusual ColecoVision game called Gutbuster. So this is actually the probably rarest ColecoVision game that I own, and it's worth anywhere from $35 to $40. And again, I paid $2 for it in an estate sale. They also had a bunch of Super Nintendo games, and I took almost all of them, again, for $2. Even duplicates are worth that. But I'm just going to show you the highlights, including Super Punch-Out, great game to own. Doom for the Super Nintendo, so now I have it for the PlayStation 1, the Super Nintendo, and of course I own the classic PC version. But this was a great find. Contra 3. A lot of people love this game, and to find it for $2, awesome deal. And then finally I wanted to show you that out of that lot was Donkey Kong Country 2. So I own the original Donkey Kong Country and now the second one, and I just need to get the third. So I also got a bunch of other games at that estate sale, but these are the highlights. So the week of PAX just had some great highlights, and meeting Pete Dora was definitely one of them. I basically made myself available to take him around to a bunch of local Seattle video game stores because I knew that he was stranded here from the massive hurricane that had struck New York City. So he was stranded for a couple extra days in Seattle. And I didn't know if he'd take me up on it, but thankfully he did, and it was a fantastic time. I would say that Pete Dora is just a super down-to-earth guy, really easy to hang out with, a lot of fun, and we went to a bunch of games one day, and you know, I think that I know a lot about video games until you're around Pete Dora, and his depth of knowledge of gaming, I just don't know if I know anybody who's quite his equal. He knows everything about role-playing games, but also action games, shooter games, platform games. The list just goes on. And so while we're cruising around, you know, he was doing some damage to my wallet because he'd point out games where he's like, dude, you have to own this. And so the games I'm going to show you here are some of those that he pointed out. And the first one that we ran into that I was just like, really? Is Astro Boy for the Game Boy Advance. Now, you know, and if someone was to tell me, oh, pick up an Astro Boy, I'd be like, really? I mean, you know, I like Japanese anime quite a bit, but I don't know if I'd go out of my way to buy, you know, kind of an obscure Astro Boy game. But it turns out it's actually made by Treasure, and it's fantastic. And so I was really happy to get this. And Pete's the kind of guy who likes to get things complete in the box. And when he saw this there, complete in the box, he's like, you know, Jason, you got to get it. So I bought it. Love it, and it was very cool. Another game that he said I just had to take home and own is Heart of Darkness for the PlayStation 1. This is a really interesting game. Again, I would have totally passed this up, and it kind of reminds me of Out of This World or Flashback, those old games where, you know, it's pretty brutally difficult, but it's just really interesting. It's a dual disc, and it comes with 3D glasses for some of the cinematics. So really cool to own this. Again, I would have never picked it up. A game he thought that I might like. I kind of like adventure games, and this is Blazing Dragons for the PlayStation 1. Haven't played it yet, but I guess it's kind of similar to a lot of Monty Python television shows, or I don't know, it's got some sort of connection to that. So maybe some of the actors did the voices, but looking forward to that. Now, he knows I'm into shooters, and we saw this random game at the Play and Trade in Kirkland, and it's a shooter. It says shooter right on the top, so it's called Starfighter Sandvane. Weird name, but I guess it's like a budget title, and I think it was $4 or $5, so, you know, take a chance on it. Now, Pete Dora loves this game, and this one store had a copy of it, and when he found out I didn't own a copy of it, he's like, dude, you got to buy it. So, you know, how do you say no, right? So it was Mirror's Edge for the Xbox 360. I've heard a lot of good things about it. The problem is I played the demo, and everyone says the demo did not accurately represent this game, and so glad to own it. And it's definitely got a following, so much of a following that actually people are kind of demanding they make a sequel, so looking forward to playing that. Now, another game that he highly recommended, and also Jason Heine recommended as well, and it's a pinball game like no other, and it's called Flipnik. And the reason why this is like no other pinball game is because it doesn't really try to emulate the pinball hardware. Instead, what it smartly does is it really mixes video games and pinball together in a way I've never seen. And this is one of the most interesting pinball games ever. I mean, you fire this up and 5 minutes into it, you're just blown away. You know, it has multiple levels. You do crazy stuff. You travel from one board to the next. There's like little mini games and challenges built into here. It's crazy, and I'm not a huge pinball fanatic. Like, I don't know enough about it, but I have an interest in learning, and so I've been collecting some pinball games over the years, and I think this is one of the most unique ones. If you are into pinball in any way, definitely check out this game. And then finally, he was really cool, and he found a copy of Phantasy Star for the Sega Master System, and it was complete, but he already had the cartridge, and all he needed was a box of manuals, so he gave me a copy of Phantasy Star 1 for the Master System, and I thought that was very cool. And yeah, thank you, Pete. That was a lot of fun that day. So during PAX weekend and all the madness that was going on, Ryan right now and I were helping, God, this fucking douchebag over here. Come on. So during PAX weekend, I got to also hang out with Billy and Jay from the Game Chasers. Super cool guys, totally wacky. I mean, they tell each other dick jokes and yo mama so fat jokes all the time. I mean, they're crazy guys, super fun to hang out with. And Ryan right now and myself were helping them kind of drive them around, show them around, trying to shoot an episode, things like that, run their camera. So I didn't get a lot of my footage with them. But you know, hopefully they got some good stuff that they'll be able to use on an episode. But you know, while we were out, I had to see if we can find some games, and I did find 2 games for the Atari 2600, and both of them are kind of unusual. Bermuda Triangle, hadn't seen this one before, and I was able to pick it up fairly cheap at a pawn shop, local pawn shop in downtown Seattle. And then also another one, and this is a really cheesy and bad Atari 2600 game, but it's called Wabbit. I mean, with a name like Wabbit, I mean, what do you expect, right? You know, I don't know what it is about Atari games, but if I see one that I don't have out in the wild and it's cheap, I just have to own it. So I've mentioned fellow YouTuber Ryan right now, and Ryan lives north of Seattle in Bellingham, and he came down to Seattle for PAX, and it was super cool hanging out with him, getting to know him, talking tons of games. And as a thank you, he donated a stack of games to my man cave. And I'm only going to show you the highlights right now, but he gave me some awesome stuff. And I just want to thank Ryan for doing that, including giving me The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. I didn't own this. And the reason for that is because in the Seattle area, this is kind of hard to find. I mean, I can walk into a store and buy it, but usually it's overpriced. And so I usually try to find it in a pawn shop or something, and it was cool that he gave it to me, so I didn't own this. He also gave me a copy of Mega Man 2 for the original Nintendo. I'm just starting my Mega Man collection, and so having the second one is awesome. He also gave me Castlevania. Again, I didn't own this game, and I've heard it's excellent. I heard it's pretty hard though, of course, a lot of these old games are, but again, it's awesome to own it. So, and he gave me just a stack of other stuff too, but Ryan, thank you very much. All right, and then finally, I went over to a guy who I'd bought games in the past. If you have seen my kind of rare Zelda pickups video, same guy, and he was selling a bunch more a little bit harder to find games for a really reasonable price. Basically take eBay prices and cut them in half. And so that's what I got these games for from him. And that includes PlayStation 1, Castlevania, the classic, Symphony of the Night. Now, this is the greatest hits version, so he gave me a really good deal on it. But I've never played this, and it's awesome to own in my collection, and I want to thank him very much. He also had some classic Dreamcast games, including Cannon Spike. Heard great things about this Dreamcast game, and again, it's kind of hard to find for a reasonable price, and he gave me an excellent deal. Speaking of shooters, he gave me one of the all-time classic games, which is called Mars Matrix, and a lot of people consider this in their top 5 or top 10 shooters of all time. Can't wait to dig into this. It's supposedly really complex, a lot of depth to it, and beautiful. He also had a copy of the classic Final Fantasy Tactics for the PlayStation 1. I finally own this. I owned it, or I still own it on the Game Boy Advance, and I heard it's coming out soon for the iPad, so I might be tempted to pick it up there. But to own the original, and again, he gave me an awesome deal on this, so that was very cool. And then finally, of all the pickups, Power Stone for the Dreamcast, another classic game that a lot of people think is just one of the best on the Dreamcast, and so I finally have that in my collection, and super cool to own it. Can't wait to give it a try. A lot of people. I'm almost there. All right, so those are the games I found during the week of PAX Prime 2011. Man, I can't wait to do it again next year. I met so many cool people. It was just awesome. But I gotta tell you, it's been really weird having my games spread out on a public picnic table. I mean, I've had to do about 50 or 60 takes because people keep walking by. It's been crazy, so I need to get these things home and start playing. So, all right, everyone, thank you for watching my channel, and thank you for subscribing. Take care.